The AH-64 Apache first flew in 1975. The AH-1 Cobra, its older cousin, first flew in 1965. In 2026, both are still the backbone of American and Allied attack aviation, and the United States Army has no fielded replacement for either of them. That is not because a replacement was impossible to build. The Army has tried to replace these helicopters at least 3 separate times, and each time it canceled the program itself after spending billions of dollars. The most expensive of those failures, the RAH-66 Comanche, consumed nearly $7 billion before a single operational aircraft was delivered. The most recent, the Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft, was canceled in 2024 after years of development. So the real question is not why the US can't replace the Cobra and the Apache. It is why the most powerful military in the world keeps starting these programs, keeps funding them, and keeps killing them before they reach the battlefield. The answer involves stealth helicopters that flew and were scrapped, a war that changed the rules mid-program, and a procurement system that may have quietly concluded the manned attack helicopter has no future at all. Both the Cobra and the Apache were born from the same lesson. Helicopters in Vietnam were dying in large numbers, and the Army needed a purpose-built gunship to survive. The Cobra was a fast, narrow-profile rush job developed in the mid-1960s to provide armed escort and fire support, and it worked well enough to remain in Marine Corps service for decades. The Apache, developed in the 1970s and entering service in 1986, was the far more ambitious answer, a heavily armed, heavily armored tank killer designed explicitly to stop Soviet armored divisions from pouring through the Fulda Gap in a European war. The Apache was designed to win a war that ended before it ever fought it. The Soviet Union collapsed 5 years after the Apache entered service, and the massed armor battlefield it was built to dominate simply disappeared. What saved the Apache was its adaptability. Instead of killing Soviet tank columns, it became the Army's primary close air support and precision strike platform in Iraq, Afghanistan, and every conflict in between. The aircraft built for one war found a second life in entirely different ones, which is precisely why the Army has found it so difficult to define what a replacement should even do. The first serious replacement attempt produced a stealth helicopter that actually flew, actually worked, and was canceled anyway. The RAH-66 Comanche, developed through the 1990s and into the 2000s, was a genuinely advanced aircraft. Radar-evading shaping, internal weapons bays, and a sensor suite, years ahead of anything else in Army aviation. 2 prototypes were built and flown. The program was intended to deliver more than 1,200 aircraft to replace the Army's aging scout and attack fleet. The total projected cost ran into the tens of billions of dollars, and by 2004, the Army had already spent close to $7 billion on development alone. Then, in 2004, the Army canceled it. The Comanche was killed not because it failed, but because the Army decided it would rather spend the money on drones and on upgrading the helicopters it already had. The official reasoning was that unmanned aerial vehicles could perform the armed reconnaissance mission the Comanche was designed for, at lower cost and without risking pilots. The Army redirected the Comanche funding into modernizing its existing Apache and Black Hawk fleets and into expanding its drone programs. It was, in hindsight, a remarkably prescient decision about where warfare was heading, even if it left the fundamental replacement problem completely unsolved. After the Comanche, the Army tried again, and the second attempt produced even less. The Armed Reconnaissance Helicopter program, awarded to Bell in 2005, was built around a militarized commercial helicopter to keep costs low and fielding fast. It did neither. Costs climbed steadily. The per-unit price more than doubled. And By 2008, the Army canceled it after a formal cost overrun review, having delivered no operational aircraft. In the span of a single decade, the Army managed to cancel 2 consecutive helicopter programs without fielding a single one of either. The pattern reached its most expensive conclusion with the Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft, part of the broader Future Vertical Lift Initiative. FARA was meant to be the true replacement for the Scout and Attack mission. Bell offered the 360 Invictus, optimized for speed, and Sikorsky offered the Raider X, built around its high-speed coaxial rotor technology. Both companies invested heavily on top of Army funding, and according to defense reporting, the Army spent years and around $2 billion across the broader effort. In February 2024, the Army canceled FARA before either prototype completed flight testing. The stated reasoning, drawn directly from what the Army had observed in Ukraine, was that the battlefield had changed fundamentally. Cheap drones and loitering munitions were performing the reconnaissance and light strike missions a manned scout helicopter was designed for, at a fraction of the cost and without risking aircrew. The Army announced it would instead buy more Apaches, retire its aging Kiowa-derived scouts, and redirect the money into unmanned systems. 3 replacement programs, spanning 30 years and well over $10 billion combined, had all ended the same way, canceled by the Army that started them. In 2024, the same year it canceled FARA, the Army committed to keeping the Apache in service into the 2040s and beyond, ordering new-build AH-64 ART-E version 6 models, even as it abandoned the aircraft meant to replace them. That decision, more than any single cancellation, reveals what is actually happening. The Army is no longer trying to replace the attack helicopter. It is quietly betting that the manned attack helicopter has no long-term future at all. The war in Ukraine has been brutal on rotary-wing aircraft. In the opening weeks of the 2022 invasion, Russian attack helicopters were shot down in significant numbers, and as the war ground on, both Russian and Ukrainian crews increasingly refused to fly the low, slow attack profiles their aircraft were designed for. Instead, they lofted unguided rockets from a distance, firing in an arc and turning away before they could be engaged, sacrificing nearly all accuracy for crew survival. The vulnerability that has haunted attack helicopters since Vietnam, that they are large, slow targets operating close to the ground where everything can reach them, has only grown worse as cheap precision weapons and drones have proliferated. The Apache and the Cobra survive not because they are irreplaceable, but because the mission they were built for is being quietly handed to machines that do not carry pilots. Whether the manned attack helicopter is a mature technology with decades left, or a category of weapon slowly being made obsolete in real time, is the question the Army's own cancellations keep answering without anyone in uniform being willing to say it out loud. Thanks for watching. The story of the Cobra and the Apache is usually told as a tribute to 2 great aircraft, and on that level, it is deserved. Both have served longer and fought in more wars than anyone expected when they first flew. But the more revealing story is the graveyard of replacements behind them. A military that cancels 3 replacement programs in 30 years is not failing to build a new helicopter. It is telling you it has stopped believing it needs one. If this kind of analysis is useful to you, subscribe and stay with us. Next time, we are looking at the Comanche itself in full, the $7 billion stealth helicopter that flew, worked, and was scrapped anyway. See you then.